And welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see with us right off the hop this episode, Coach Clem, former D coordinator, right-hand man of Rob Horn of the BSM Red Knights, now retired. I know he's been at quote unquote. Hey, that was your quote. It's not my quote. I know he's been around a couple other places. I know he's done some other things. Also a speaker at Down the Alley Summit year 1, and just locked him in for year 2 on February 17th, 2024. Be there or be square. Coach, welcome to Down the Alley.
How are we doing? Happy holidays, guys.
Yeah, you're bringing the Christmas spirit. Are you in Santa's workshop right now, or where are you in the North Pole? Where are you coming in from?
Yeah, a little bit. So we have a 3.5-year-old, so we have to keep all of the presents like behind a locked door. So that's pretty much what we have. Just the guest bed is strewn with gifts for friends and family. So we're leaving for the in-laws tomorrow morning. Just spreading holiday cheer.
We were talking a little bit. What's the big present? Maybe for the kid that you're hiding. Are you hiding something in there for the old lady too? What's going on there?
I will not disclose what the wife is getting in case she listens to the podcast. But with the little guy, I have a feeling that a 3.5-year-old's not listening to the podcast. It's very dinosaur heavy this year. A lot of action figures for Jurassic Park. A lot of clothes with dinosaurs on them. Spinosaurus is like the hot topic right now in terms of like it used to be T-Rex. It's now been surpassed by the Spinosaurus. So I wouldn't be surprised if one was under the tree from Santa this year.
I have a cool dinosaur situation, right? So you were saying like that 3-year-old age group, it's just like all about dinosaurs. My girls are the same way, like dinosaurs. So there's 1,000 different streaming services, right? And they're saying like, oh, pull up a dinosaur cartoon or dinosaur movie. So I think one day I just spoke into the smart TV, like dinosaur movie, Amazon Prime. There was this dinosaur, like it was like a musical, like a cartoon musical. And the music was all like heavy metal. And it was the best show. And like, it wasn't like flagrant or anything, like it was kid friendly, but instead of it being like lullabies, it was like rock music, and they were like sing about dinosaurs, and it was awesome. And I wish I had the name of it. I can't remember it, but I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah, please text me after the pod if you find that, because we are in need for more dinosaur content, to say the least.
This is interesting. So I was doing some Christmas shopping, and I got down to the list of your girls, Ted. So are dinos both for boys and girls, or are the girls are in dinos too? Because I had no clue. I haven't bought them anything because I got to them in the list. I'm like, I have no clue what to get them.
I'm not really sure. I know that my girls both, when they were in that like 3-year-old time frame, they like dinosaurs. I don't think they like them.
They're not current, not in 2020. They're on the next phase.
They're 7 and 5 now, so
got it. Okay.
And like just
they've aged out of the dinos.
Yeah, like
so what should I, when I go back to Target for round 2 of shopping, what aisle should I go down and take a peek at here?
Yeah, something that they like that kind of like warms my heart. It's kind of some nostalgia. They think board games are fascinating, and
I can do a board game.
In digital world, it's like kind of like, oh, cool, like something that I remember. Board games, right? So we got them a couple board games, and they like puzzles too. So like it's not all iPad stuff.
I know where that aisle is. I can grab a couple things from that aisle. Yeah.
Big fans of Uno.
I love Uno.
And now,
great game.
And I think you got them into Uno, but now there's like different versions of Uno. Packs and like.
I'm waiting for them to get a couple years older, because then we can do the different versions, and I can start yelling at them and get competitive with them. I didn't want to go down that road yet. I just been the intro to regular Uno, but I'm excited for that day. Yeah.
I think I scared a couple of nieces and nephews at the Uno game at Thanksgiving, because I got way too competitive.
Oh yeah, no, I know, No, I don't blame you. No judgment from this side of the pod.
Yeah, it's on or off. Uncle Chaun, it's on or off. Either we're playing to win or we're not playing.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Cool. So I guess to, maybe talk a little bit about lacrosse or something, at least loosely lacrosse tonight. Would love to, I know you've been on the pod before. It's been a couple years. Would love to like reintroduce you to Down the Alley Nation. Maybe reintroduce you to the lacrosse world of Minnesota. I know you've been out of the game for a whole year, so maybe people forgot who you are. I don't know. But would love to just quick background. I know most recently you were coach at Benilde, but I think you've done some other things too. So would love to just kind of dive into who you are as a lacrosse player, not just dinosaurs and competitor.
Sounds good. So yeah, I can just kind of take you back to the beginning for like when I first picked up a stick. So grew up in Hastings, Minnesota, just down the road here. I currently live in Burnsville, but I was a big baseball kid for most of, I would say, adolescence, if you will, until the summer before my freshman year of high school. I broke my wrist, so I basically missed summer, like travel baseball. So at that point, the baseball career is over. I got to find something else. And I had a good buddy of mine. His name is Jared Siebnaller. I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but if he does, shout out to Jared. His brother played lacrosse for the Hastings Raiders. And at the time, at Hastings, since this is all club ball, so this was not sanctioned, this was the old MBSLA days, we could not call ourselves the Hastings Raiders. We had to call ourselves Sting Lax, just because they didn't want any affiliation with the program.
Who came up with Sting?
Who came up with Sting? I believe that was our head coach, Matt Thomas, a proud St. Cloud State alum. But anyways, so played lacrosse for 4 years at Hastings. Originally started as an attackman. Then I transitioned to midfield. And then
how long did that take? How long was that? Mine was like a 3-game transition. How long was your transition from a short stick to deep ball?
I would say I was a JV attackman for probably a year and a half. And then due to injury, we needed some midfielders. So then at that point, I played like a little bit of like defensive midfield, like my sophomore year. I was, again, just as a defensive midfielder, this being like the infancy, at this point, it's like the year 2002 in Minnesota. We just needed a defenseman. So I became a LSM. The coaching was basically just chase the guy with the ball and just try to take it away. So I was like, all right, I can do that. And then from there, it was, just transitioning to close defense. And at that point, after graduating from high school, I stayed close to home, went to St. Cloud State, played club ball up there in the IMLCA, was an LSM and a close defenseman up there as well. After playing at St. Cloud, there was an opportunity to basically go back to coach at St. Cloud, just because it was always like a player run program. So I just really enjoyed my time up there. I really didn't want to see it fall onto hard times. So I was the head coach of the St. Cloud State lacrosse team for close to 3 years. During that time, I also kind of dipped into the high school game. There is a program down the road in Inver Grove Heights, like Mendota, called the Trinity School at River Ridge. It was a very small private school. Also playing MBSLA. At this point, there was already the split between the MSHSL and the MBSLA. So it was kind of like 2 concurrent leagues. One was kind of more developmental. One was, obviously the sanctioned one. Was a head coach there for 2 years. A good buddy of mine, Eric Bohr, who was a teammate. He was the best man at my wedding. Became the head coach at Champlain Park and hired me away from Trinity. So I was the defensive coordinator at Champlain Park for 4 years.
I knew there was Champlain somewhere in there. I thought you were a Champlain alum, so I'm glad I didn't lead with that in the. So I just assumed that, right? But no, yeah. Go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
2 questions based on where we're at in the story here.
Yep.
What year did you graduate from Hastings?
I graduated from Hastings in 2004.
Okay,
so you're bank at Vermilion.
Say what now? I do
do you
not bank at
bank?
Vermilion. I do not bank at Vermilion.
So did you play with that guy named Eric Warg?
Oh man, that sounds. Yeah, I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So good friends I have of my wife's actually. And when I first met him, like right when I started dating my wife, he was like, "Oh, you play lacrosse?" Like I played lacrosse in high school in Hastings, and I'm like, "Well, we never played Hastings or whatever." But small world. I thought you were a little bit younger than me, but we're the same age, so that's interesting. And then the second one was, where were you living when you started coaching at Champlain? That's a kind of like that's not like super close to like anything. Like that's way up there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So when I was coaching at Champlain, it's kind of twofold. So my first stint at coaching actually was at the 7th and 8th grade level for what used to be called the Northwest Lacrosse Club, but it's now CPYLA. And that was with Eric Bohr, which is how we became like coaching buddies and how he then later hired me down the road once he got the head coach job at the high school. But when I was coaching at NWLC, I was living at home in Hastings. So I was driving from Hastings to Champlain Park
Champlain.
to Champlain like 5 days a week for 7th and 8th grade practice because I was sick in the head.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say, um, to all our listeners out there, especially those that are kids, do you understand like the negative ROI for 4 years driving from Hastings to Champlain every single day for
well,
what,
here's
$1,000?
here's the thing. So here's the thing. So that was 2 summers
That's
for
50
NWLC.
miles one way, for approximately.
So that was 2 summers. Like that was like when I was like still living at home. So I was a sophomore in college. So it was like sophomore, junior year, living at home, like during the summer, coaching up there for $500. So it clearly just burned that away in gas and oil changes. But I just really love coaching those kids.
Wow.
Coincidentally, one of the kids that we coached was named Nick Culpitz, who is now currently the head coach at Queen's University down in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So just crazy small world there.
Is he the
But
first Minnesota-born Division I head coach?
in terms of Division I, I believe he is. Yeah.
I know a lot of guys have gone into coaching, maybe even been at Division I, like assistants, but head coach. I mean, to head coach a Division I program from Minnesota, like born and raised here.
I do believe Nick is the first.
There you go. So I mean, so return on investment right there, right?
There you go. There you go. Totally worth the time in the car. Totally worth it. But like, so when I was at Champlain Park High School, I was living in St. Louis Park / Minneapolis. There's kind of like an in between there. So I was living with a good buddy of mine, Nick Flash and Ream. Then during that time, I moved in with my now wife, Michelle. But yeah, just living in the Minneapolis area, working in Eden Prairie, but then driving to Champlain Park for practice. So that was for 4 years as a defensive coordinator. During what would have been like my 5th year as a D coordinator, Eric stepped away just due to family reasons. So I kind of became like the interim head coach for year 5. And obviously just with the responsibility of being a head coach, going to booster club meetings, along with balancing like a career in Eden Prairie and driving to practice. Because the thing with Champlain, and again, this has now changed, thank God, is that there weren't any lights on the practice field. So we had to practice pretty early. So it was basically practice start at 4 o'clock for JV, 5:30 for varsity. But at the same time, you had to get stuff in. And with our staff, they weren't always there for, the bus to make it to the JV game. Like they would certainly meet us there, but I would have to leave work early at like 2:30, get to the school, ride the bus up, run through warmups. The JV staff arrives. I then step away, do the varsity gig, and then it was just a ton. So I just had to step away because I was getting married the following fall, and I just needed like a little bit of a break. Now, coincidentally, during that summer off, Rob Horn got the head coach job at Benilde St. Margaret's, and he shot me a text / called me and said, "Hey, would love to have you on staff. It's an assistant gig. Obviously, like the responsibility is like a little bit less, but we're really looking to just like awaken this sleeping giant, and we just kind of would love to have you with me." And I said yes, and spent 7 years at BSM, and it was a great time in my life.
Would love to hear how, these Duluth guys, it's really hard for these Duluth guys to branch out and I feel like it'd be even harder for a Duluth guy to call a St. Cloud guy. Maybe I'm making assumptions, but how did that bridge get connected and built there? Just did he shoot a shot? I know this is probably pre DMs. So how did he shoot a shot with you?
So Rob and I've always respected Rob, and I'm not just saying that just because I used to work for the man and he's a good friend, but just like from a distance, when he was the head coach at Blake, and when we were at Champlain Park. Uh, Side note: thank God the Northwest Suburban Conference finally split in terms of like, hey guys, you can actually schedule more than one out of conference game. But back when we were coaching, like Eric and I at Champlain, we can only do one out of conference game, so we had to make it count. And Rob actually answered the email. They're like, yeah, come on down. And that's like when Blake was basically at the height of their powers. We got our butts kicked, but at the same time, like I just had a ton of respect for the guy. We also had some mutual friends, Ian Gallagher, Chris Garland, kind of working through like homegrown at one point in time. But yeah, when he was at Wayzata, we would exchange film in terms of like Champlain and Wayzata, just kind of helping each other out. Coincidentally, during the state tournament one year, we did meet each other in the first round of 4 versus 5 seed. We lost 5-3. Not bitter about that at all. But yeah, that was kind of it. So we were competitors, and then we just kind of became like fast friends, and that's pretty much how it was.
Ted, did you have something?
No, I think it's pretty crazy just the like all the different places you've been, because I think most people would probably just associate you with Benilde, because that's like your most recent stop. You were there for a long time, had a lot of success there. But even some of that stuff I didn't even know about you. Not that we're like long lost friends by any means, but like I didn't know some of those spots that you had, and some of those pre high school things that you did. And not to like take away from your story, but um you've coached a ton of people, just like in general, just for as long as you've done it. I'm curious, this is like the number one question I wanted to ask you tonight. Who's the best defenseman you've ever coached? And
Oh God,
or maybe best player. I assume defenseman. I have a couple in my head that I think you're gonna say, but yeah, I want to hear it from you.
all right,
And
that's an
I know
extremely
you'll
loaded
probably
question.
say there was a lot of good players, and I love them all. So maybe
Yes,
a top couple, if you can't pick just one.
yeah, okay, I can't pick just one. I'm just gonna give you like a handful.
All right.
I'm just gonna kind of start just with. I'll go Champlain as well as Vanilla because I spent the most time there. At Champlain Park, one of them was actually not a defenseman; it was an attackman named Ryan McNeil. He was extremely good, very talented, good team leader. I can't remember if he was an All-American at one point. I believe he was All-State. But he's currently the offensive coordinator at the University of St. Thomas. That was a really good one. In terms of the defensemen at Champlain Park, I'd be remiss to not basically name 4 of them. One was Cody Schmidt, another was Cole Grubner, Matt Steenerson, and Evan Shrout. Cole played at Mount Olive. Matt Steenerson played at NDSU. Evan Shrout played at NDSU, and Cody Schmidt played at Adrian out in Michigan. Those guys, in terms of like when I kind of came into my own as a coach, like I don't want to call them guinea pigs, but like I threw a ton of stuff at those guys, and they were extremely receptive. They were extremely hardworking. They wanted to be pushed, and with that core, we were able to make to the state tournament for 2 years. When we were at Champlain, we finished third one year. We ended up like in the consolation bracket like the following year after losing to Wayzata, and Rob Horn was even when he was an assistant there. But those are fantastic guys. Benilde, we've been extremely blessed with a lot of great goalies. Buzz Williams, Jack Keller, Justin Dallum, Axel Lesko, all those guys. It just kind of it starts from the back and building up. I'd be remiss to say Seamus Foley wasn't one of the best defensemen that I've ever coached. He's currently at Georgetown right now. He was just so fundamental in everything that he did. He wasn't like super flashy. He didn't throw a ton of takeaway checks, but he just didn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Mason Wortelman, the COVID year kind of took away, one of the opportunities that I could coach for him, like in 2020. But in 2021, he was fantastic. And then, and again, like I apologize to everybody that I'm not naming. I love you all equally. But again, and I'm still quite pissed about this. Kyle Stevens should have been Mr. Lacrosse this year. Like Kyle Stevens was a really, really good and talented player as well.
Yeah. And I didn't want to put you necessarily on the spot to like miss guys. I think it's just amazing. Some of like the players that you have been able to coach over the year and like that you've like had a hand in developing. Of course, they're naturally talented. They've done a lot of work too, but like you had a hand in a lot of their development. Like I remember Grebner a little bit. And then specifically Seamus, I had an opportunity to coach him. You're absolutely right, where it's like just you could just see things process. Like he like had this like nonverbal of like you're talking to him, you're giving him something, and like it was all happening in his head, and he was like 3 steps ahead of everybody on the field. And yeah, that run of goalies you guys have had, and Kyle, I agree with you. Absolute game changer. Just the energy that he brought to his teammates, and just made the big play when he needed to when the team needed a play. So no, those are all pretty big names in the Minnesota lacrosse scene, I would say.
You mentioned you were able to throw, a lot at these guys, and you dropping some of the names. I recognize some of the names, some of them I don't, but I've seen the teams, year after year that you've been a part of. Always a stout defense. I would love to hear, I'm sure, our listeners would love to hear too. What are you doing behind the scenes? I've seen a little bit, from afar. I got to hear you speak a little bit last year. Really looking forward to hearing you speak here in a couple of months, on film study. What types of things were you able to do with some of those teams and groups that you had and players that were, at that high level, dedicated, and students of the game, clearly.
Some of it just comes down to just like meeting them where they are, getting them involved in the process as well, like giving them a voice. Now they know that, I can veto what they say, but at the same time, like giving them the opportunity, like, hey, if they're seeing something on the field or if they want to make a change in practice, yeah, bring it to me. I mean, like, we'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, you kind of have egg on your face and I told you so. But at the same time, it kind of gives them some added buy-in there. When we're at Champlain, we were talented, but we didn't have the most talent, I will say, when we were going against, some like the larger, I'll say, like premier or like blue blood programs. So we had to get creative. So we were running like some pretty like funky stuff in terms of, where we're sending 2 slides from, like we played a little bit of zone, like at Champlain when I was up there, just because again, we didn't have like the sheer amount of athletes. So just challenging like them with that. It's like, all right, guys, like I know we were like a man-to-man team for all of last year. Well, we have completely new personnel and we're going to run zone for the first like 3 games. So we have about 2 weeks to install it. We'll see how it goes. And again, the guys just being receptive and wanting to know. I think every single defensive coach out there coaches like ground balls, coaches approaches. Like you have to, just because it's kind of what we're measured by mistakes. I mean, like when we make a mistake, the other team scores, and it doesn't look good for us. But I have always really, 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 really hammered off ball play, just in terms of like being in a spot when someone gets beat, because it doesn't matter if you're like the 5th pole that's coming in because of like injuries, or if you're a first team All-American, at some point in time, you're going to get beat. And when you're beat, you better have help in place to like button that up, have a first slide, have a second slide, have a third. And ultimately, like the most important slide is the recovery slide. Just so we can go get back to 6v6 within about 2 to 3 passes, and then everything's going to be fine. I'll say like one of the other big things in terms of like, I'll just say like my overarching philosophy is that I've never really been like matchup oriented. And this is kind of like more of like a Jerry Byrne thing. And side note there, just like growing up in Minnesota at the high school level, like the only lacrosse that we could see at one point in time was on ESPN2 on Final Four weekend. And it was like you only saw 4 teams and you're just taping them on VHS and you're wearing that thing like just dry. But now we have so many opportunities on YouTube, coaching clinics like you guys are hosting, just taking in as much as you can. So when that was happening, when like YouTube and when Jerry Byrne was still at Notre Dame, they were putting together like little like defensive like coaches clinics, defensive drills of the week, and I ate that stuff up. And I just remember him talking about like, listen, like we're matchup agnostic, and that stuck with me the entire time. Like we don't care who's covering who. Like yes, at the beginning of the whistle, off an end line, yeah, let's get back to your original matchups. But during a slide and recovery, whatever happens, happens. If we get a short stick on an attackman, we can adjust to that. We'll just slide a little bit faster. So just knowing that, I think has helped a lot as well. Just in terms of like, we don't care. Like we can figure it out. We'll thrive in the gray because again, like not everything is black and white. You're going to have to tell these guys, like you're going to have to make some decisions for yourself out on the field because again, like I can't pull the strings all the time. So again, just kind of giving them those tools and giving them the opportunity to solve those problems.
Yeah, like you, I'm soaking up what you're saying right now. I'm taking notes. So I love, listening to other people speak. One thing you said was, throwing something, funky at the guys, or throwing in something funky and, into a set, maybe based on who you're playing. And Ted and I just talked about this. I think it was last night. Are you, well, one, my question is, what's the funkiest thing that maybe you tried? Did it work? Did it not work? Or maybe what was the funkiest thing that you did that did work? And overall, your second question is just overall, are you a coach that likes to just stick to basics, true who your team is, or who you are most of the time, or do you like tweaking things and getting funky and getting weird, week to week, game to game, whatever it might be?
I think that's kind of changed over like the course of my career. I think early on I was like, let's just have 15 different defenses and just like keep guys guessing. But at the same time, when you have that much stuff and you're teaching a 14 to 18-year-old kid, it's a lot of stuff to retain. So, as I kind of progressed, we kind of like pared things down. And again, like not that there wasn't any like complexities there, but we pretty much ran 3 defenses when I was at Benilde, maybe 4. And like game to game or week to week, we'd make like a little like tweak here or there, but it wasn't anything like game changing or like, oh my God, this is a fundamental shift in what we're doing. Just knowing like, hey, we're going to slide a little bit faster this guy. And just as compared to like, we normally just sit on that matchup. So there's those kinds of things. Regarding the funkiest thing, I cannot take credit for it, but Ian Gallagher, when he was at the University of St. Thomas, had this defense called Jekyll and Hyde, which I then learned from him, and then took to Champlain because again, we needed to be creative. And you're basically splitting the field in half. One half of the field is zone, and one half of the field is man. So depending on if it's on, let's just say it's in the left alley, everybody's going to be playing zone. If it's in the right alley, everybody's going to be playing man. And it's great for like after timeout plays because it really screws everybody up in terms of like, oh, like the kids think it's zone. The coach is yelling man. The kids and the coaches are yelling at each other. And like, we're just like bottling them up. So that worked. And now it's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, a kid that you coach, I think, or had some experience with, and the one that I coach, Jack McNeil, a Blake player, he has talked about that. That is the most talked about like lacrosse memory that he has was the Jekyll and Hyde defense, Blake against Eden Prairie to beat them in the state final when Eden Prairie had Jake Woodring and he was unstoppable, and they ran that, and like, I don't know if they got lucky. I don't know if it just worked for other reasons than any other like reason, but that is like an infamous like Minnesota lacrosse defense that at Ian put in. That must have been what 2012, 11, 10, something like that. So
yeah, it was like the early 2010s, I want to say. And again, I could confirm that with them, but it's my understanding that he lifted that from CW Post because at that point in time, a guy was out here by the name of Joey Blount, who played at CW Post. He was working for Homegrown, and CW Post ran a matchup zone. Except their matchup zone is more or less just like, all right, if Ted has the ball, we're running zone. If anybody else has the ball, we're going to run man. So then Ian like heard that, tweaked it. It's like, well, let's just, instead of going off of players, let's just go off of like location. So you can either go east west, you can go above GLE, below GLE, just kind of mix it up there. But I was like, you can do that?
Yeah.
Oh my god! So yeah, that was definitely a light bulb moment.
I know we talked a little bit with Midbow when he was on last a few months ago about like innovating and being a coach that, there is that fine line, right? Between just, like you said, I have 15 defenses and I'm throwing all this stuff and nobody knows anything because I don't even know what I'm talking about half the time, versus like the other side of like, this is how I learned it 30 years ago and this is how I'm going to run it. And because this is the only thing I'm willing to like dive into and not like, I'm not willing to take risks. So there's like, okay, where do you find a happy medium between innovation and like fundamentals and what works? And I've always appreciated that about you. Obviously, really, fundamentally sound players and defenses that you've coached. But I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago. I asked you about some man down stuff, and you sent me something, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like I have never seen it coached like that, or taught like that. And I just kind of handed that off to our defensive coaches to use how they want. I'm like, hey, I got this from a guy that I know, that I like, that I respect. You know, I I would say put it in, but I'm the offensive coach, so I'm not gonna. I'll leave it at that. But no, I do appreciate some of the things that you've done and willing to like. I think last time you were on, it was like junk defenses at practice. Like, hey, we're just gonna throw something out there, see if we can piss the offense off today. If it
Yeah,
works, maybe it gets in the playbook. If it doesn't, then whatever, no love lost. We move on.
I mean that's just it. I mean we treat practice like a sandbox. It's like let's just build it up. It doesn't work, kick it over, try
Yep.
again.
Yep. For sure.
So
I love that. And that's got to be fun to play for you. Like to play for a coach that mixes it up a little bit. It's not stale every day. But it's also like we're going to mess around. We're going to see what happens. And maybe we find a gold nugget and it's exciting. Or maybe, like you said, we kick it over and all right, it's back to basics. I think it's a win-win for a coach because if it doesn't work, you can be like, see, fundamentals. Like, like it's all about fundamentals. If it does, you can just be like, yeah, dude, I stayed up all night thinking of this and I think you're the greatest, right? So you just kind of play it however you want to play it.
Well, these types of conversations, are happening at the coaches summit. That's kind of why we started this podcast, was to have these types of conversations. I know you were just at another coaches summit type of event. That was kind of one of the main topics we want to talk to you, about today. The IMCLA, that's probably the gold standard among coaches type summit events in lacrosse. I've heard a lot about it. It's been on my bucket list, I guess, to go to. Ted and I talk about it every year. We say we're going to go, and we haven't made it yet. So maybe 2024 will be the year that we go. Would love to hear your experience at that event, and I know there's been a couple, kind of storylines that came out of it. Maybe we can dive into those. Maybe there's other storylines that didn't, make the headlines that we could dive into. Again, kind of open-ended conversation here. Just wanted to kind of break that out. How was the event? And we can kind of go from there.
yeah, so I'll kind of go into the IMLCA in a nutshell. So it stands for the Intercollegiate Men's Lacrosse Coaches Association. Essentially, if you're an NCAA coach, Division 1, 2, or 3, you are a member of that. So I should say, like I had originally heard of it from Chris Garland when I was at Champlain Park, because at the time when we were at, Eric, myself, Nick, Nick and Nick, when we were at Champlain, we were just again trying to find an edge because again we had some talent, but we didn't have a ton of talent. So we're like, we can't be stale. We got to find fresh ideas. And he's like, have you heard of this IMLCA. It's like, say what now? IMLCA? IMLCA? It's like, I have no idea what that is. It's like, no, like you have to go. So originally it was in Baltimore. So it was over the weekend. It was basically a Thursday through Sunday. So everybody flies in on Thursday. Coaches have like their league meetings so they can talk about rule committees. They can talk about preseason All-Americans. But the big draw was clinics. And that was basically Friday night, Saturday, like all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning, it was coaches of all levels talking. And it could be about culture, it could be about drills, it could be about schemes, it could be about anything. And as like a fresh face, like mid-20s at Champlain Park, like, oh my God, Lars Tiffany is going to talk about man down defense. This is the best thing ever. And just taking copious notes and coming back home. And again, this is what I was kind of talking about when we're at Champlain. Like, we threw everything at them. It's like, guys, I just took like 17 pages of notes, and we're going to install all 17 pages of these notes at practice today. But over the years, it's kind of like ebbed and flowed. And it got to a point where a lot of coaches didn't really want to present. They've now actually moved it from Baltimore in December to Florida in December, which is far sunnier, far nicer. And now the clinic itself takes place on Thursday and Friday, and then they tack on a recruiting tournament. So that's Saturday and Sunday. So I was down there with the True National program, coaching their 2025 team with Chris Garland, who spoke at IMLCA, and he gave a really, really good presentation on rondos. And rondos are basically like stick work drills, but they were lifted from soccer, like footwork drills, like footwork passing drills, and how he uses those type of drills within his practices. But again, it's the same kind of thing. You can either attend it in person, or there are like virtual registrations that you can have, so you can have access to all the videos. Highly recommend doing that, just because they were talking about anything from like defensive development drills to pick play below GLE to face-offs and wing play. It just runs again. If you want to know something about something, someone's likely going to speak about it. And the other thing that's great about IMLCA is networking, because after everybody gives a presentation, everyone's staying in the same hotel, which means they're all in the hotel lobby. They're all at the hotel lobby bar, and they're just chit-chatting, talking about like, hey, coach, really loved your presentation about X. It's like, yeah, thanks. I mean, I remember, not to name drop here or anything, so I apologize, but I remember like going up to Charlie Toomey, and this was right after Loyola had won the national championship, and shaking his hand and say like, coach, really loved your talk about like culture. Is there a chance I can get like a copy of the PowerPoint? It's like, yeah, of course, just shoot me an email. I was like, oh my God, Charlie Toomey just gave me the time of day. So sure enough, like that night, I shot him an email. Hey, spoke in the lobby bar. It's like, hey, coach, not a problem. Send me the PowerPoint. And it was like, this is freaking great. But if you have the opportunity to go to IMLCA, I highly recommend it. Regarding the hot topic that came out of the discussions was the possibility, and again, this is not like a for sure set in stone, but they seem to want to change the face-off rule like every year, and it's really annoying.
Every other year they want to tweak the face-off, and my phone is blown up. I'm not a popular guy. My phone doesn't blow up, but my phone is blown up twice in the last month. The Lindenwood news, my phone, I had missed calls and 100 text messages, and then this face-off deal. People are blowing my phone up asking me about this face-off situation. So what can you tell the people that what was being discussed about the clamp, the no clamp, the face-off? There's a lot of anti-face-off people, anti-clampers, I'm going to start calling them, in DTA Nation.
Yeah, I'm aware. I follow the Discord, see them on Twitter. They'll remain nameless, but yeah, I know who they are. Anyways, the big thing that's coming out of like the face-off is like potentially banning the clamp. Now my question is, what is a clamp? Because at the same time, like it's a slippery slope in my opinion. Because all right, and again, like this is just kind of like what they're thinking is that instead of like clamping the ball and popping it out, players would just kind of like swipe at it, almost like a razor. So think of it almost like a girl's draw, how they're like standing and like pushing it up. It's basically like, again, you're standing, ball is on the ground, and you're just swiping at it like you would I don't like that at all because, again, it's just, I don't want to say it removes skill, but if you're just swiping willy nilly and just hoping for the best out of a ground ball scrum, then why are we even talking about this? The other thing, and again, not that it necessarily like trickles down to the high school level, would be that shortening the face-off clock, or I should say shortening the shot clock after a face-off, so similar to the PLL. So right now it's an 80-second shot clock. What they want is after a face-off win will only be 60 seconds. So again, we're kind of shortening that up. Again, within the PLL last year, it's like a 53-second shot clock, but during the face-off, I can't remember what it was. It was like 30-ish seconds, I want to say. So I believe the Water Dogs just started conceding face-offs, like, hey, we'll just play defense for 30 seconds, and then we'll just have a full shot clock to go.
That's what Prior Lake does too.
It's fine. We'll just play defense. We'll figure it out. But yeah, the big thing was basically just about like, hey, if the clamping's not involved, we're just going to swipe. That also trickled down to the recruiting tournament literally that weekend, in terms of like college coaches that are looking to finalize roster spots for the 2025s, looking at 2026s. They're kind of hesitant about picking up another faceoff guy, just because like, well, we don't know what this rule is going to look like in 1 year. So I think those kids are kind of like out on an island, just in this weird like no man's land. As of right now, things are going to be status quo. Like the face-off is going to be the face-off, but the fact that they keep bringing these new rules up like every other year, it's getting real annoying.
So what's going to happen in 2 years, or 2 years after they change the rule, and there's going to be a group of face-off guys that get really good at not clamping the ball, and they win 75% not clamping. What are they going to do then?
I don't know. That's just it. I mean, it's always at that point just to be like, and we're not going to play sixes. We're just going to eliminate the face-off entirely, and we're just going to do like. I mean, honestly, I don't know what people want, which is the hard thing, because again, like, I like the sixes format. I don't love the sixes format. I think there's a time and a place for it. Let's put it that way.
The off season.
Yeah. There you go. The Olympics off season. I like field lacrosse the way that it is. Not to like, stick my foot in the ground and, just sound like an old man, but like
Purist, yeah.
Field lacrosse is 10 on 10. I really like field lacrosse. I mean, like, I don't want to bring sideline horns back. That was archaic at one point in time, but we have a good game. Like, I thought last year for the NCAA tournament, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect in terms of like, there was just enough scoring. There was just enough defense. The shot clock is great. We don't need a 2-point line. It was awesome. But
instant replay.
It's just
instant replay.
Yes, we do need instant replay. It is coming.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. There was like discussion around like, hey, like when can we use instant replay? And it was really just like, the big one being like, if a ball enters the cage, when time expires, or if a ball enters a cage, like if someone is in the crease, like those ones that like screwed Penn State last year or the year before. So that is coming, but yeah, ultimately when it comes to the face-off, just don't touch it, guys.
I kind of agree with both of you guys on that, of like, if you're changing the rule but still having the face-off, then the people that are going to do it are going to get really good at whatever the new rule is, and then we're just back at square one. So it's like you either have it or you don't have it. And I think there's like this argument of face-off guys being like, if they're dominant, it's like too much impact on the game. Which is I don't know if I agree with that take, but one thing is like, I also think if you're going to like have that stance, you have to like have the other side too, of how many times has a lacrosse game become more exciting because the losing team had a face-off guy and they weren't completely out of it. There's a few minutes left in the fourth quarter, down by 3-4 goals. They score, their face-off guy gets hot. They get the ball back. Now we have a game. So like, if you're going to take it on the one side, you have to kind of accept the good and the bad. Right. And I think that's what I love about the face-off situation in lacrosse, is that you're never really truly out of a game if you can win face-offs.
It's true.
It makes the game exciting. as opposed to like other sports, it's a lot harder to come back and win if you're just like if you're down by 4 or 5 scores, you're kind of done. I know basketball is one where you can kind of make a run and like make it a game even if you're down big. So I do like that about the face off in lacrosse.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree. And just in terms of just like again, just like those people that complain about like, oh, we don't like. I understand like not having good face-up guy. Like at Vanilla, we've been very blessed with good face-up guys. I understand that, but at the same time, like there are resources out there like the IMLCA convention or various YouTube videos that talk about wing play to help negate really good face-off guys. Like it's not a one-on-one battle. You can position your guys accordingly. You can double. Now it's all kind of about ratios in terms of like, all right, it's a one-on-one at the X, it's a one-on-one on, you know, on one restraining line, it's a one-on-one on the other restraining line. If you double the face-off guy, you're basically in like a negative ratio because now someone is open. But at the same time, you have to take those risks to get that ball back. I mean, Prior Lake and Vanilla, again, for 4 straight years, I would say we had a face-off advantage. But at the same time, you guys fought tooth and nail and made us work for it every single time.
Yeah, to speak on that, you know, again, we're getting kind of nitty gritty in like game plan and scouting and whatever, which is fine. I think a good portion of our people will like this. Yeah, you got a Fogo who typically can't handle the ball. You got an LSM, unless you got Benild's guy last year. You might not want the ball on his stick. And if they throw a D mid on the wing, you got 3 people on the field potentially who aren't the best ball handlers. You can go triple the Fogo potentially and get the ball back. Or just get in and play defense and get to 6-on-6 and just prevent a fast break. Like, I don't know. You can play it in multiple different ways.
And it's fun. Well, it's funny because we're getting like nitty gritty on game planning, but even just taking a step back and saying you could maybe discuss this at practice and have a plan for not having a good Fogo period is like, oh, holy smokes. Like we can dedicate some practice time to be like, we got Quinn Power today. Like shit, like we're gonna have a situation on our hands.
Oh, we're not going to win one unless he breaks his stick on the Fogo on the face-off. That's the only time you're going to get the ball on the face-off.
Yeah, so it is funny how it's just like, oh, okay, like maybe block some time, right, to talk about.
To your point, Ted. I mean, if you're preparing for Quinn Power in pregame warmups, you've already lost. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, no doubt. I think hopefully they don't mess with it too much. But you never know. I feel like I don't even know the rules from 2012, let alone the current face-off rules, because they change it all the time. So
I'm interested to see how big the box is this year. One rule change that's been brought up. I'm interested to see if it was spoken about. I think in sixes, if you miss the net, goes off the end line, it's the other team's ball. I think that would be one interesting rule change. Maybe at the younger levels, if you don't have a shot clock, maybe that could be implemented. Was that discussed at all? I think that'd be that's one rule change that is interesting to me right now.
So at IMLCA, it was really just like NCAA and just the NCAA like product. So like sixes was kind of like its own like thing over here. But to your point, Ted, I mean, again, I think sixes at the youth level is fantastic. Just in terms of like, you may not have a strong face-up guy. You should be shortening the fields anyways. If a U6 or a U8 player is playing on a 110-yard field, that's a hell of a lot of running. So yeah, shorten up the boxes, play sixes, and again, like I think in the PLL last year during like their championship run or their whatever it was, their sixes tournament, if you will, I believe like when it was a missed shot, it was technically like a turnover and went to the other team just to kind of keep the game going. And obviously generating more shots. Goalies get turned to burger is the downside, but I mean, I don't mind it. Again, like it's great in spurts. It's great for development, but yeah, it's a mixed bag. It always is.
Yeah.
Anything else out of the IMCLA topic? We did a lot there. I like where the directions it went, but any questions we should be asking? Any other things to note?
The only thing I would notice, like if you have the opportunity to go. Whether it is in person, which I would recommend, just in terms of like it's a networking opportunity as well. Like wear your school gear, like they can put a name to a face. But even if you don't go in person, like shell out the money. I mean, I'm sure your booster club could put up the 175 or $200 or whatever it is for the year-long basically window that you can have access to the recordings and just watch them. And again, like don't think that you're too smart in terms of like, oh, I already know about man down. It's like, yeah, you might know man down, but at the same time, like there could be a term that they're using that would just it opens up something like in your head that like, oh my God, just that term alone makes teaching this one skill that much easier as compared to me using 7 words to say it. I can use 2. Oh yeah, I'm totally gonna use that. And it's worth the 40 minutes that you watch that video for. So again, just don't be the smartest guy in the room is essentially what I'm saying.
And like remember too that like these guys go like they don't go to an office and do a day job and then go coach lacrosse. They show up and lacrosse is their day job. They 8 hours a day they're thinking about man down defense. So like they probably know something and they get paid to do it. So yeah, I've always found that interesting too. If someone being like, I already know like a bunch of stuff about this, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm like, I just like want to know. I'm almost happy. Like if I like it's like again a no lose situation. You can like download the video. You might learn something. You probably will learn something. That's a win. And if you already know everything they're talking about, a Division I coach or a Division II coach, great. That now you feel great about yourself. Like I'm awesome. Like I can go to my team with confidence. So it's a no lose situation to go and get yourself exposed to lacrosse education.
And on February 17th, we're going to try to emulate. We're going to do the Minnesota version of that, the Minnesota, high school, boys, girls, youth, coaches, all invited. Might have some refs speak on, any things of note, on their side of things. Like we said, Coach Chaun here is going to be speaking on, I believe, film review.
That is correct.
Any sneak preview on what you're gonna talk about for them for
yeah,
people
sure.
who are attending.
Yeah, sure. So in February, so thanks again for the invitation. I was kind of scratching my brain in terms of like what to talk about because I genuinely enjoyed speaking last year and just meeting several coaches, developing friendships that I didn't think I would develop. I can get to that momentarily, but in terms of just what I'm going to be speaking about in February, sorry to kind of go off on a weird little rant and word vomit there. Film breakdown. I'm not going to teach you like the only way to break down film. I'm going to teach you essentially what I did during my time at Champlain and Vanille as to how I broke down film. It's a lot about like pattern recognition, matchups, defending the knowns, if you will, and just kind of going through, all right, how can I take basically a 2-hour game, boil it down to 15 minutes of clips, make it digestible for a 14 to 18-year-old so they can take it away like in a scout or in a film session before practice, go like, all right, I feel confident that not only can I match up against this guy extremely well because I know, a handful of his moves, but at the same time, I know that in man up, if their best shooter is at X, he's probably not going to stay at X for very long. He's probably going to roll up above GLE into a shooting spot. And just, again, like recognizing those patterns so they know that, hey, if he's back there, he's not back there for long. Give it 2 passes. He'll pop up. Again, just kind of know where we are. This sort of kind of came about with it was like a week ago, the whole Twitter thing regarding like film and do you want to share film and should it be shared with everyone?
We have had that discussion privately. I think that conversation somehow got leaked. I'm not sure how that started. But we've had, I know Ted and I have had that those conversations. If you want to talk about that, feel free to give us your opinions.
I think it was PMAC. I think you were traveling for work and then were sick during this.
The Fargo flu. The Fargo flu.
During this episode of Twitter situation. Again, a person who, well, a former co-host, interim co-host that we had a couple weeks ago on our podcast, said something about sharing film, because I originally had like quote tweeted someone saying like we should have all film up on an exchange, and I just quote tweeted and said like, yeah, that's how college works. Like everybody's like required to put their games on this shared drive. Goltz made a comment. Horn jumped in. Chaun jumped in. And then I don't think like shots were really fired. I think it was just discussion, heated discussion. And then we just ended at, I think that Chaun and Rob watched a lot of film at Benilde, and then we're just like, yes, like no doubt you did. Like success obviously proved it, and that was the end of it. But yeah, it was kind of funny. But I think in it spawned this topic of film breakdown. I'm like, all right, what a better, no better guy to do this at the summit than you.
Yeah, like we sort of came over the top. Like Rob and I were like, how dare you like want to like give away film? Like we should gatekeep that. This is a competitive advantage. This is the chip that we can use in exchange for other things.
So I'm gonna fire back on you on that. The competitive advantage is you actually opening your laptop and clicking play on the film, because 9 out of 10 coaches, I think in the state of Minnesota, don't do that, even if it was on a shared YouTube, whatever. So I think the competitive advantage is actually clicking play on the film and actually watching it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like to kind of like piggyback on that, the analogy is basically this: like I can buy a treadmill and hope I lose weight, but until I actually get on that treadmill, I'm not losing anything. So it's the same thing with film. Like, yeah, I can have 17 games with an opponent, but again, to your point, PMAC, if I don't watch any of it, what good is it? So, but I mean, to that point though, I mean, this is just a part of like Rob Warren. So I thought I was a pretty good and competitive coach, and then when Rob hired me, it's like, oh crap, I gotta step up my game here. I gotta keep up with Rob. Just because I remember getting texted like 1:30 in the morning. It's like, hey, did you see like how they clear? It's like, what? So at that point, it's like, yeah, I guess this is Benilde. So this is what we got to do. So just staying up, watching film again, just preparing those kids as best as you can. Because again, like when people ask me like what I miss about like coaching, remember, I miss games. Winning is fun, but it's practice. It's the implementing of a game plan. It's the relationships that you make, and it's the teaching of these kids, because we sure as hell don't do this for the money. And if I can give them some kind of edge or some kind of confidence, like that fourth pole, that man up specialist, like, hey, if you get this look, like it's open all day. You just got to hit it. And when that happens during a game and their face lights up and they look at you, it's the best feeling in the world. So I mean, it's a drug. I mean, it's a drug. It's a great feeling. You just want to keep doing it. So at the same time, it's like, all right, well, that clearly happened because we were able to find this like one little thing in film. So again, I'm just going to continue to do that as much as I can. Now, am I going to lose sleep? Yes. Am I going to be stressed about it? Probably yes. But at the same time, it's just worth it.
So yeah, if you want to hear him dive more into this topic, I know I do. I'll be sitting in the classroom with my notebook, taking notes, February 17th. Speaking on networking, I feel like when you're having your word jumble situation there at the beginning of this topic, networking is also something we're adding to this event. This was for year one, it was kind of the whole kind of original idea, hanging out, talking a little bit of lacrosse, eating some barbecue, kind of networking was kind of, part of that. I think we thought it was going to happen more naturally. I think it did happen naturally, but it's going to be more of a focus going into year two. Going to be something we try to slot into the schedule for everybody. Would love to hear your experience. It sounds like you met a couple people last year maybe. And I also just wanted to note that's something we're also trying to add into the event going into year two.
Yeah, sure. So last year, Coach Beach, former head coach at Centennial. Like when I was at Champlain, he was still at Centennial. So I knew, like, I had like known him in the past. It was like just good to like get in a room with him, shoot the breeze, talk about lacrosse. But I would say like one of the most surprising was Coach Kapner, just because the Benilde Prior Lake rivalry is like, I did not like that man. I had no reason to not like him just because I had never really spoken with him. It's like, he's Prior Lake, I'm Benilde. It's like oil and water. But at the same time, again, just getting in a room, having conversations, like getting up on the whiteboard together, talking through man down clears. It's like, it was really, really good. And like, he's a really good guy. I kind of feel bad for like hating him for roughly like 5 years. But at the same time, like it's like expanding your horizons, networking opportunities, of course, but it's just like meeting people that love lacrosse as much as you love lacrosse is refreshing. Just because for the longest time, again, growing up in Hastings, starting playing lacrosse in the year 2000, the lacrosse community has always been a small one. And like, yeah, we kind of know of people, but we don't know them. And the fact that you can like shake their hand, have a conversation, chit chat about like whatever. It doesn't even necessarily have to be lacrosse, but the fact that like lacrosse is bringing you all together for like a shared purpose was a really great. I don't even want to call it like a side goal or whatever, but at the same time, it was that was probably the highlight of the DTA summer last year, in my opinion. The barbecue was great too, but
I agree.
Ted, sorry, I cut you off. I'm going to go first and then you can go. We need to clip that because I think some people might not like me and have never met me. So clip that. I think, you don't as long as you meet me at Down the Alley event or somewhere and then you don't like me, fine. But yeah, I think come out and meet each other, talk some lacrosse, eat some barbecue. I think it'll be. I also had similar experiences meeting other coaches around the state. So Ted, what do you have?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you touched on that. And I'm glad you felt that. I think when we were planning the event last year, we didn't really know what was going to happen. It was kind of like, man, it'd be cool to like. I feel like I'm having this lacrosse conversation. I got a text chain with Rob and Chaun. I got one with PMAC. I got one with my coaches. I got 12 conversations going about lacrosse on my like phone. I'm like, why don't we just have an event and we can all just like talk about this and like actually be like in the same room? And like, but I do agree with you, that feeling of like being around 50 other people that love the game. And like, I know of the three on this call and a bunch of others, we could have sat there all day and like been in the school overnight, probably talking about lacrosse schemes. And like finally we just had to get up and leave and like, okay, the event is over now. Like we can go home kind of thing. So I agree with you. It was the content was fantastic, but just like getting to see people and, you know, not having it be on the sideline before a huge game where it's like,
mm-hmm.
oh, okay, like, hey man, like, it's like, all right, we can like kind of talk to each other. So I think that was a really cool experience last year. And it is a small community, but it's a really tight knit one.
Yeah, and like speaking for myself, last year it was like my first spring away from the game, and my wife doesn't want to hear me talk about lacrosse. So I mean, the fact that I had that I had an outlet with like a whole bunch of like minded people was fantastic. Which again is what I'm looking forward to February 17th here.
Awesome. Chaun, last question. I feel like I haven't even really been asking you questions. It's been less of an interview, more of just shooting the breeze. What's your alley? Would love to just, kind of one last thing about you. What's your thing? To kind of wrap this up, we ask, every guest, as you know, because you listen every Friday morning, because I get a text from you by 8 a.m. on Fridays. So I have to ask you here, what's your alley? What's your thing? You know the question.
Yeah. I think I'm not saying that it's my alley, but like I think lacrosse is always going to kind of be like a thing, just in terms of like the saying, like if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So even though I'm on my sabbatical, my like retirement, quote unquote, if you will, I'm still like trying to learn as much as I can for my inevitable John Wick like return. What I will say though is that as of right now, just being the best dad that I can. We kind of touched on it earlier. I just having a 3.5-year-old, full of personality, just doing dad stuff. I mean, today we watched the Paw Patrol Mighty movie just because we're taking basically today was our Friday, so we had like a pizza picnic in the living room. We watched the Paw Patrol movie. It's entertaining. I'll put it that way. It's not winning any awards, but again, just doing dad stuff is awesome. The other thing though is again just like continuing just education, not just like lacrosse wise, but I am a sucker for any kind of like behind the scenes practice game sports documentary thing. So if you have like, I think it's called Max. It's like it used to be HBO Max or whatever. They have an in-season Hard Knocks with the Miami Dolphins, and that is so fascinating because Mike McDaniel, their head coach, is the least football-looking head coach, and in terms of like just the way that he speaks, the way that he thinks about the game, but the way he can interact with players, the way that he connects with his team, the way that he teaches, it's super fascinating. So just anything along those lines, whether it's books, whether it's YouTube videos, again docu-series, whatever. I'm a sucker for all those.
I've seen a lot of side content on the Dolphins this year. So I might have to check that out. Ted, what do you got?
Yeah, I got two things. I know that's usually our last question, but the first one is, you talk about like being a dad, going to see kids' movies. You gotta go see Trolls Band Together. It's a new Trolls movie. Brought my daughters, and it's like all throwback to like boy band pop music from like the early to like late 90s, and like it was well done. And I was like, all right, I can get on board with like some cool music, and like they had some of the whole thing. So that's a good recommendation. The Mighty movie, like you said, not going to win any awards, but that was a big one that we had to go to. A couple funny moments. The last thing, we talk a lot about food on this podcast and barbecue and restaurants. And you mentioned you jump back into the club lac scene with True National. So you travel a little bit for lacrosse. In the past, you were a club coach. What's the best food you've had on a club lacrosse trip? Like any year. It doesn't have to be recent. It could be from years ago. Best restaurant or best food.
That's tough. I am a sucker for like any like Long Island deli, to be honest with you. Like any kind of deli, I will always drive out of the way for. In Baltimore though, like everybody goes like for crab cakes. I like pit beef. Like you have to go get pit beef in Baltimore. Like if you don't know what pit beef is, it's basically like a roast beef sandwich with like horseradish and like onion, but it's like charred a little bit, but it's so damn good. So I would probably say pit beef.
Yeah. So did you go to Chaps then?
Yep. Yeah.
I have not been there. I've had a pit beef before, but I haven't had it from Chaps. They're unbelievable. I would agree with you there. Yeah, no, that's a good call. And I think a lot of people listening to this will probably be in that area at some point in their club travel career. That's one year or another, or one team or another. I think Chaps is in kind of not the nicest part of town, so be cognizant of that. We're not telling you like do some like research, but if you get a pit beef, Baltimore pit beef, I think that's a great call.
Yeah, to your point, that just be mindful. Yeah. But yeah, it is well worth it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming down the alley. Appreciate your time. Obviously have a great holiday, and if we don't talk beforehand, we'll see you February 17th, and for another day of talking lacrosse, probably pretty similar to this.
Sounds good. Appreciate the time, guys.
Thanks, Chaun.
All right, see you.
And thank you to Coach Clem for coming down the alley with us this evening. That interview is brought to you by Old Southern Barbecue, our sponsor for 2024. They will also be at the Coaches Summit on February 17th. Big supporter of Down the Alley. They're a local family-owned business. They're a lacrosse family They support other lacrosse organizations. I've been seeing them sponsor, I think Edina Lacrosse, maybe a couple others. So, big supporter of youth sports, big supporters of, the local community, being a local family owned operation. Thank you to them. And we look forward to having them at the Coaches Summit. And, we thank them for their support. So, again, thanks for Coach Clem for coming down the alley with us. We will be back, and I think we've been going every other week. So we'll be back the following week with another interview. And pretty soon here, we'll be doing the section dives. Ted, I'm looking forward to diving into each section. I know on downthealleypod.com, you and the Source have been doing some deep dives, some blogs, kind of doing the preliminary, deep dives on the website. I haven't really been part of that, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you and diving into each section here.
For sure. Yeah, that's can start to feel it. The season's around the corner when we start talking about sections. So I'm looking forward to that.
And yeah, you said on training, our last training session, after the holiday here, it's real preseason.
Preseason.
So
It's not anymore. It's preseason.
yeah. So we'll be back here soon. And thanks for tuning in.